So how is that 20-page article? I think
It
it's
was.
around being like, what? 20 pages? I don't remember that.
I thought it was due on Tuesday. Wait, what?
I'll get the first part. X.
I really thought it was due on Tuesday.
I thought it was interesting.
My brain.
If you haven't finished that, again, okay, you can have it read and respond to it then. But we are generally talking about how virtue ethics is applicable to power structures and whether or not participating in those structures means you are lacking virtue according to the theory.
Honestly, I think more of the issue with that was the writing itself.
The first little bit was not particularly good. Yeah, that whole X non-X thing. We're not in a math class. I don't want to know anything about X and what that might be.
No, that one made sense. It was later that was confusing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that one did make sense. That's what I wrote mine on about the X's. You're gonna have a lot of fun reading mine. It's interesting.
No. Personally, my takeaways were more akin to the vegetarianism and the whether or not one should participate in, or if the experimenting on animals. Those were the two sections I found particularly compelling and where the argument was the best. The setting up of the argument with X versus non-X, I don't even like. I haven't done any kind of math like that since I was younger than you.
That was kind of similar to what we actually talked about in class, though, right? Like the different ways you define the intrinsic value of life.
Sure. It was. I just put in a way that was not very, it's like purposefully obtuse. That's all. But on that note, we touched on the idea of vegetarianism for a second in class last week sometime or the week before. And the article talks a lot about factory farming and how participating in, being a passive participant in factory farming might equate to you causing that harm. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? Like by that, I mean, like if you're purchasing meats from a factory farm, do you have any culpable responsibility to that? Oh, there's Justin eating. He must love being at home. Is that Charles's? Charles, you said yes because purchasing meat from factory farms. Is that you? Charles gives an economic perspective, right?
It's not like accurate because I really forget some of the concept.
I mean, okay. You don't need to be citing if you were going to cite your economics textbook, I wouldn't be angry. But you're talking about voting with your money, voting with your dollars, right? You guys have heard the concept of voting with your dollars before, have you? And what does it mean?
Oh, voting with your dollars?
Yeah, voting with your money.
Like put your money where your mouth is, right?
Yeah. It's supporting organizations through financially, basically. If you're going to purchase from an organization, you're supporting them. They're going to continue if you continue to purchase from them, right?
It also
You both paused there for a second. So I was testing to see if it was just Lucy playing around, but no, Hannah Julia also paused at that time. So.
Oh, wait, so do I have to repeat what I said?
I would appreciate it.
Oh, okay. It also sort of ties into more money can but does not always equal more votes.
Okay. In what sense?
I'm trying to think of an example.
When does more money mean you don't get as many votes?
I mean, you don't get as many.
Oh, you said it can, but doesn't necessarily mean. So when does it not mean?
Hmm.
Hard to find an example, isn't it?
Yeah. Than I thought.
Has anyone ever boycotted a product?
Sorry, I'm not really sure what the definition of boycott is.
Okay, so to boycott something means to not support. Like you, if you say, oh, Mac completely mistreats their employee, or let's say Amazon. Amazon's a much better example. Amazon completely mistreats their employees, so I'm not going to buy anything from Amazon. I'm going to boycott them.
I think I have.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, makeup products, like two makeup companies. They were really unethical and participate in a lot of racist and sexist acts or whatever. So I stopped using their products and never bought for them again.
And do you think that will go ahead, Angela?
Also, there are some like clothing brands that mistreat their workers and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree with Nikki. I've done that too with like makeup products.
And it wasn't to make the situation better, like even though I hope it does. I hope the situation will get better. But it's more like the discomfort that came with it. I don't know.
Okay, so it's for your own personal comfort. You don't want
Yeah.
one to make yourself feel better.
Yeah. Basically.
But the point of a boycott. Go ahead, Anna.
Yes, sorry. I wanted to say then it somehow does make a change if we start educating more people and like make people understand the situation that like we're at. So then if we get more people to stop using this product, then they'll go out of business or something. So then we stop that, from keep happening.
Right. So education.
Yeah.
But if enough people boycott a company for philosophical or ethical reasons, then they're not going to make as much profit, right? If they choose to just not give money, like if how much do you think it would take for Amazon? How much of a profit loss would it take for Amazon started paying their employees more or treating them more like humans?
Not.
A percentage wise, it probably wouldn't take that much. If
Not
there's
much at all.
a specific boycott of like 2% of their overall profit, that's insane. That's an insane amount of money. So these methods can be used to try to veer a company, because companies are typically very amoral creatures. They only care about profit. To a more ethical perspective, treating people better, finding a more center value to things. It has worked in the past. Many of you have heard of apartheid, right? In South Africa, there were boycotts in the 1980s, early 80s, of South African goods to try to convince the government to give up this segregation. And that was worldwide. So that's not necessarily a company, but the same thing can be said about like a country's GDP. These methods are used everywhere in life. Governments will sanction other governments, prevent them from trading with them, to change the behavior of that government. Now, how does that fall on like whether we're passive participants in a system? Well, if you're spending money on something to keep it going, it's going to continue going, right? Let's see. What's this one say? I think it depends on the situation. If you're able to afford to purchase meat that is made more ethically, like free range, then I think it's somewhat responsible for that. So who wrote that?
I
Raina,
wrote that.
do you have any thoughts on it to expand on that?
Yeah, I think for the first example, like purchasing meat from a factory farm, if you have like more money or you're in a more privileged situation, I think you definitely have control over that. Um, in the case of cosmetics, I don't think cosmetics are something that's very necessary. So I feel like if you're supporting a company that does experimentation on animals and like harms them, I think like anyone who buys into that would be responsible
Because
for.
you could choose not to, right? You can cut cosmetics all out of your life. If they're the cheapest ones and you can't afford anymore, you could technically just cut them out, and that would be making the ethical choice. Now, I like what you're saying here because you're pointing out if you have the privilege, if you have enough money to do that. What is our author's name?
Rosalind Hursthouse.
Hursthouse, thank you. So when Hursthouse talks about like ethical choices and being able to make these choices, she does point out that if it's a choice between eating meat that has been treated cruelly or not eating at all, what's the ethical choice?
Eat food in general.
Eat food and live, right? It's not there is a high she spends a lot of time talking about the hierarchy of life. And there are people that will disagree with that, but if it's between your safety or your life and your livelihood and doing this other thing that in other times, in better times, may be considered unethical, do the unethical thing because you can't do it later if you're dead. You can't change and become better. So that's why I really like Raina's pointing out that it's a privilege that some of us have to be able to afford free range meats. And if we choose not to do that because it's slightly more expensive and we want to save a little extra money, the ethical thing is to spend that money, right? Again, it's about privileges. It's about being able to do that thing and still live our life.
How about changing the way some of these things are? For example, like how animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way these animals are killed, and because some people are vegetarian because of the compassion they feel for the animals and stuff, right? Because of they've seen videos or they know what happens to the animals and stuff. How about I'm not sure, but do you kind of get where I'm going?
So you're asking about being able to change the organizations that are doing these things, right?
Yeah, something like that.
So how,
Or getting cosmetic companies to stop testing on animals and just
how do you
I
do
don't
that?
know something. That's the thing. I like myself. I can't. I mean, I could, but I need more people.
Right. So that was the whole concept of boycotting with money, right? There are people
Yeah.
that go more extreme. They go to they protest the eating of meats. They create documentaries. Like you said, you wouldn't have known anything about factory farming if you hadn't seen documentaries or news articles, journalism about it, right? But I mean, are you talking about eco-terrorism? You want to go set a whole bunch of cosmetic labs on fire?
No, isn't that bad for the environment?
Oh, well, okay, then don't worry, it's a controlled flame. But yeah, the being active, if you really believe it, you know, if you're privileged enough to afford being a vegetarian, which somehow can be more expensive than not somehow. Like there are times when, like because
Yeah.
you need to eat certain foods if you're a vegetarian to maintain a healthy lifestyle, you might end up actually spending more. Not necessarily true everywhere, but it can. It can.
Yeah.
Um, if you're privileged enough to be able to get all the foods you need to be able to afford it, and then you want to be an activist, a political activist in the rights of animals, yeah, you could do all that. Those are all things you can do to support the decline of the mistreatment of animals. And it seems like to me, Ariane is probably the only one, well, the most vocal one thus far that I've met that is interested in not eating meat or helping animals. But maybe some of you are vegetarians. I do not know.
I was a vegetarian for 4 years.
Oh,
Such a lie.
It is not a lot. I was a vegetarian. What years was I not a vegetarian?
All right. Look at that. Hey, look, you guys can yell at each other in your own house. Oh, shoot. 20 minutes left. 10 minutes left, I mean. Yeah, this is great. I can just mute Lucy. No offense, Lucy. It's nice. It's like,
No, I take no offense to that.
let's see. Let's look at a contrary point of view. I haven't looked at one of those yet. I put them all in one little corner. Sally, I don't think so. I don't think we should take responsibility for other people's acts, but that depends on the things being consumed too. For example, people shouldn't consume purposely on the animals that are endangered. Okay, sure. Sally, do you have anything extra to say about that? Oh, by the way, my favorite thing about this is that it starts with Sally's signature. You know?
I think I explained my point in what I write.
So after seeing other people's perspectives, you still think it's okay to, like, from a privileged perspective, to buy factory farmed meats or to buy cosmetics. These are just two examples. We could be talking about like racial power structures at the same time, right?